Surely can. Trustee Rubin. Yes. Trustee Hallwax. Here. Trustee Mealopoulos.
Here.
First order of business. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes that were included in the packet for today's meeting, which were for our November meeting?
Motion to approve November meeting.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. And this then is the portion of the meeting where if anyone would like to address the committee, that's anybody. How's your chance? Hearing none. Okay.
I'll take it personally.
Shall we?
Okay,
Thank
here we
you.
go. All right, so in tonight's agenda is the December treasurer's report. We'll be going through the highlights of that this evening, revised several times. I apologize for that. But the final report is in the online packet. And then we have a few CIP updates, and then we will have a short discussion regarding the current status of the golf club project budget. So diving right into the packet, one thing I would caution everyone here and anyone listening at home, these numbers are unaudited. So we already had our preliminary audit field work this week. And the village's auditors will be back at the end of February for full field work. That'll be a 2-week process. So these numbers that you see here today are really kind of a modified cash basis. They will be adjusted for year-end amendments. And then we also are still processing invoices for 2023 as they're coming in. We do allow staff and our vendors to submit those through the beginning of February. So these are the numbers as of December 31st, but they are subject to change when we make accruals and year-end adjustments. The good news on property taxes is that overall, the year ended higher than last year by $3.7 million. Without prior year payments, it's coming in at $555,000 over what we were projecting budget-wise, which is good news. Once we back those numbers out, on a sales tax basis, sales taxes for the month of December, which were actually for 3 months prior, were higher, lower than this month last year and what we were budgeting for. But when we look at the whole year, sales tax ended at 106.2% of budget. So still reflects strong performance at a local level, which is a good sign. For the month of December, places for eating, income tax, parking fees, ambulance fees, E911 surcharge revenue, water sales, and MFT were all higher than what was received in December last year and what we were projecting budget-wise. When we look at all of the revenues annually, I would add to that list utility tax, building permits, telecom, use tax, and PPRT all ended the year in excess of what we were budgeting. Now, one thing with PPRT, as we talked about before with the finance committee, is that we do expect to see that revenue to decline because of that error that the Department of Revenue made, where they were over allocating revenue to us, and now they're going to start taking it back. In the recent months, what we have seen is a decline in revenue. I was afraid that they might wipe it out entirely and we wouldn't get any distributions, but it does seem like they're taking it a little bit at a time. So I would expect to see that drop in 2024, and we did project that in the budget. Let's see, on an expenditure level, the expenditures are higher than last year. Some of that is just the difference in capital year to year, and they ended at 92.5% of budget. Again, we will finalize that number once we have all the year-end invoices in. There will be a large addition with January's check register. This Thursday check register is all 2023 invoices, so you'll see that come before you as well. The water fund had a strong finish to the year. There were a couple months there, especially before we got all the summer usage in, that it was a little nerve-wracking. Not sure if we were going to hit our budget targets, but volumetric revenue ended the year higher than last year at 107% of budget, about $260,000 difference difference year over year. Our fixed charge revenue, higher than last year at 100.9% of budget, about 23,000 higher than what we had anticipated. Just a quick note on expenditures here. Again, these are unadjusted numbers. If you remember, we did approve a couple amendments, budget amendments in December. Those will be posted as part of the year-end close audit process. So I wouldn't expect that to end in excess of budget because we did make amendments in the water fund for a variety of reasons. Some of it was bond issue costs that came in a little bit higher than what we were expecting. Chemical costs, energy costs, and just the cost of brass fittings right now is kind of through the roof. So those amendments were approved in December and those will be posted as part of year end.
What was the change on water from 2022 to 2023? So just looking at that, people use the same amount of water, but the revenue is higher because we charge what, 5% more?
We increased the rates by 7%.
So just eyeballing this. People use similar volumes of water, but the revenue is higher because they're paying prices. Yeah, thanks.
Turn it over to Stella. Also, great news.
Great news indeed. Several record-breaking line items to report. Of course, these are unaudited, but I don't expect them to change significantly. We broke the $3 million mark in revenues, which has never happened before. Our net is $822,000 for this year. It's a remarkable number. A lot of money came in through interest, which we've never seen before, about $173,000. But our rounds were about 200 short of our record. And just the sheer volume, when everything closed, we increased our rates quite a bit as well. Our expenses have been kept at bay. They haven't increased with our revenues hand in hand. So a phenomenal year. I would put our numbers up against anyone in this area. Nobody can touch us. We had a great year.
Stella, what year is the record year?
21.
Okay.
Was over 44. This year we had 43, 7.
21 was an
Thirty.
an unusual year.
Right.
Yeah. So
So,
we were 270 rounds short of our all-time high, but obviously because of the increases in rates, we had quite a bit more in the interest coming in. We were able to find some capital that we've been looking for the last 2 years, in equipment investments to use fairway mowers, which are essential, which Dave has been scouring. The private clubs usually turn these over really quickly, but there's been no supply. So they've been sitting and holding on to their equipment. So we got 2 used fairway mowers. We got a used trencher. We've got a new electric gator. This we couldn't find used, but it's in line with our Autobahn, kind of a designation. We're trying to go electric when we can. So we got a new electric gator. We're able to find a new 6-seater. So all of these are exciting purchases that we also have not been able to find in the last 2 or 3 years. Friends of the Glencoe Golf Club is doing very well. They had a board meeting last week. We had some smaller donations come in at the end of the year, about $30,000, including some pledges. But Kim Swinton and Ellis Goodman, who's in charge of the fundraising, they have some prospects in line, have some really good meetings. They've created materials for distribution for the whole group to use, and they have a top prospect list. So their goal this year is to find 6 people in the 100,000 plus category and also introduce naming opportunities. They are still going for the high end donations right now and not going for the broad spectrum of looking for, 10,000 or less from people. That day will come, but right now they want to keep it specific to higher prospects.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along into the remaining funds, debt service, motor fuel tax, and the capital projects fund. All the expenditures in those funds were as expected, in line with budget projections. On a personnel basis, overall for the year, we ended the year at about $971,000 higher. The biggest driver of this is salary cost, as we are finally filling public safety, so it's a large number, but it's a good number. It's what we want to see. And then our pension cost has reversed. Some of those contributions have caught up. Some of that is timing. As you recall, last year, we did forward advance a large dollar amount to the pension fund to make up for property tax contributions being late. Now we're continuing to see last year's property taxes trickle in. So this should also level out once we do all the year-end close accrual entries. But certainly a significant increase into filling vacancies, which is good. When we look at the financial projection spreadsheet, when we're looking at revenue only, as compared to the budget, the general fund is currently sitting at December at $3.4 million over what we are anticipating. Largest driver, that is the property tax issue. When we back that out, our revenue came in at $1.7 million over what we were projecting. And that has a lot to do with the revenues that we listed at the very beginning. The sales taxes, the PPRT, the use taxes, all coming in much higher than what we expected. The water fund came in at total 408,000 over what we were projecting. Again, large driver is our rate increase. When we add revenues and expenditures together and take a look at the bottom line impact to the fund, the general fund has an addition of 1.5 million. When we take out those property taxes, that is much, much better than what we had planned for. We were planning for the drawdown this year. So some of that is our revenue performance, and also some of that is capital projects that either came in less than what we expected or were delayed into 2024. So that may be just some timing there as well. On the water fund, we're adding $2.1 million to the bottom line. The biggest driver of that is the issuance of the alternate revenue bonds this year, which is purposefully being aggregated for water main projects. Fund reserves at month end unaudited. The general fund is sitting at 78% of operating expenses, 16.8 million, and the water fund is at 104% at 6.7, again, because we're aggregating those reserves for capital projects. Looking at inflationary impacts, our commodities, and no surprise to anyone, we've been talking about this all year, obviously much higher than last year, but only at 92.4% of budget. We'll see what this last month of invoices does to that figure. And then also contractual services, higher than last year at 89.9% of budget. We did take this into consideration when we did the 2024 budget because we are seeing elevated prices continue into 2024. We're expecting this. So I'm hoping that we see that trend start to slow down at least, but at least hoping that we will be within budget. Happy to answer any questions on the report.
And for those that are listening to this or watching it, I think it's worth noting that while the general fund balance as projected is up materially, we also project it's going to decrease quite a bit in 2024. Again, to your point about a lot of capital projects and things were deferred, plus other things that we're doing in 2024. So that number is lovely to look at, but it's fleeting.
Yes.
We're going to put that money to good use.
It's good. We do have plans for that money, for sure.
Is it fair to say our revenues and expenses are growing at roughly the same rate? Because everything is higher. You look at all the places of
Yeah.
but I'm saying that that's probably, again, like water, doesn't mean people aren't going out. Like if, like the restaurant owners are gonna say, we do 100 lunches. So they're saying they did 100 lunches last December, we did 100 lunches, this lunch is more expensive. Just like our brass fittings and everything else is more expensive for us. So we have increased revenues, increased taxes, but we're probably seeing similar on the other side of the ledger, right?
I think that's fair
Without
to say.
just hype it, and again, I'm just spitballing.
For operating expenses, I think that's absolutely fair to say. Where the wild card in there is capital expenses, where we try to kind of build that in. But I'd say overall, when you're looking at it long term, they're growing.
It's more labor now than physical materials, right? Before 2020, we couldn't get anything, everything was expensive. Now it's labor costs above more than it did 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, and I would say from the revenue side of things, particularly, 2023 was a fairly static year for our business community. We didn't lose or gain a whole lot. Certainly, I think some things came online that had been anticipated. So I say that Uptown at Hometown Coffee, that has proven based off of what we're hearing from the business owner to be incredibly popular. So there may be some of that built into it, but Honey Butter Fried Chicken was hoping to open much sooner this year. They've just opened this weekend. So I think it'll be interesting to see in 2024 kind of how with the downtown that's essentially full without a whole lot of expansion opportunities. Are there other things that are going to drive those numbers, or have we kind of plateaued with respect to sales tax or places for eating tax? So that's definitely something that we've talked about and are going to look at.
Moving right along, I'll hand it over to Margaret to review the CIP schedule.
Good evening. So tonight's January update is on page 55 and 56 of your packet, and the quarterly updates on page 57. So this final report is for the 2023 Community Investment Program. And this report includes payments that are included on the January board checks that are going to be up for approval on Thursday evening. Like Director Larson mentioned earlier, there still are some additional expenditures related to some of these larger projects that will be coming in through the beginning of February. So we might have slight changes in some of the expenditures there. And then next month in February, you can expect to see our 2024 items that we have in our community investment program. And you will also note that some of those projects that we deferred from 23 to 24 on that new list. And then there'll be probably some expenditures so far, but more of those capital expenditures tend to be a little bit later in the year. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you.
Moving right along to the golf clubhouse project budget update.
Oh, there's not that many slides. Monica and I are gonna review and give a little update on where we are with the clubhouse project. And Monica's gonna start us out with our design progress overview.
Sure, thanks, Stella. So I know we're all aware that we're at the end of our schematic design phase, and that involved working with the ad hoc design review committee, kind of looking at the architectural design components of the clubhouse, but there were a lot of other things that we were working on as well. So looking at a preliminary site layout, we were also looking into the permitting and scope requirements with the Cook County Forest Preserve, MWRD, and just Cook County permitting in general. We also got some geotech work done and the survey for the site completed. And actually, in part of that exploratory phase, we expanded some of the components of the survey as well. And then we've been working with FGM to finalize a floor plan layout and make sure that we have an optimal square footage for the plans. So we're wrapping that up as we speak and moving into design development. So the next couple stages for the design overview, we'll be going into design development, which is a little bit more detailed development of the design. We'll kind of firm up some quantities, get a better understanding of some scope items that maybe have been still in question. From there, we'll move into developing our construction drawings, which will be really the final finishes on all the design, getting those drawings ready to go out to bid. And as you can see, the final item there is our bid documents and getting the project out the door and ready for construction.
Okay. I'm gonna review where we are with our budget and changes that we've seen. So as you know, we did have our referendum approved this year in April for $15 million. This was based on numbers that were provided in October of 2022. Approximately a 10,000 square foot building, basement, new parking lot demolition, architecture and engineering fees. So since that time, there have been some changes. There's some escalation that has happened. We could pinpoint it to three major categories. There's inflation, construction costs, the Cook County Forest Preserve, and stormwater management. So just to touch on those a little bit, there have been no changes at all in our design components. Everything has stayed as it was in 2022. We did not expand to like 15,000 square feet or anything like that. So everything that we have increasing expenses in is due to inflation or things that have been required from the Forest Preserve. Inflation and construction costs have grown significantly since 2022, and they're going to continue to climb. A big ticket that we did not expect as well was there's a new building ordinance from the Cook County Forest Preserve that we're going to have to follow. This adds up to almost $500,000. No fossil fuel burning equipment is allowed in the new building. That means we have to upgrade our electric to 2,000 amps. Everything has a ticket to it.
Like the electric stuff.
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Premium lead silver items, lead energy and atmosphere has to be followed for safe building materials and tree preservations. So we do have to eliminate the use of fossil fuels. They created this new building ordinance without ever thinking they'd ever have to deal with a restaurant. So we have already had discussions with them regarding the use of a charbroiler and broiler because you can't reach optimal temperatures with electric. The technology is not there yet. So we have proposed just using a natural gas line for those two components. They seem,
They seem open-minded
yeah,
to it.
they
It's-
seem open-minded
I
to
think
to
when
that
we-
change.
When we brought it up, it was one of those, as Stella said, oh, we never really thought about a commercial kitchen in a Forest Reserve District facility. So they're gonna get back to us on that. I don't expect that's gonna be a major issue.
And with the caveat that once the electric technology catches up, we can cap the natural gas line and move to electric. These are all great things. These are not bad things that they're requiring us, but there is a cost to them. And I guarantee you that this building will be the most efficient public building in the village of Glencoe or anywhere in the area based on these requirements. I mean, we're happy to have them. We love that we will be able to promote them, but there is a ticket to including those in the project. Also, stormwater management is coming in higher than we expected. There never was a stormwater management program enacted because our building is 100 years old. So everything has kind of just evolved and we never had to work with the MWRD on anything. That has been pushing our project costs for stormwater management quite high. We're still estimating numbers and working with our project manager on what these have been. The surveyor has been out. We've been looking at different options. We are going to probably be able to move majority of the water to our driving range and then head it north to catch up with our existing drainage system, create a retention, and then go to our pond. But these are costs that we did not anticipate.
What sort of physical items are we talking about having to put into the design of all of it that we didn't anticipate?
For the stormwater?
Yeah.
Well, there
We
was.
knew we had to have the runoff go somewhere.
Yeah, we knew that we had to have it go somewhere, but I think that when they gave us their estimated costs, they thought that we already had a plan in place and we've pretty much been just using the natural elevation. Everything runs to our irrigation ponds. And
I think, another aspect of it is essentially is you're touching the ground. So that means MWRD is involved. And that, I think, was perhaps to some degree not focused on as much by the architects early on because of the unique nature of the Forest Preserve District ownership of the property. So we're working through it. We've actually come up with some really good alternatives already from where we started. Stella said, kind of utilizing the space that exists already, utilizing the retention ponds that exist on the golf course and being able to, I don't want to say recycle the stormwater within the property, but to maintain as much of it on the property as possible so that it doesn't make its way to the public stormwater system. That's really a significant component of what we're trying to do because that can help to reduce the cost dramatically. We're also looking at, as a function of this, what other components might we look to that could get us MWRD grant resources, and we'll talk about grants in a minute. But if we focus on a permeable paver lot or a portion of the lot being built of permeable pavers, there are alternatives that we're working through. And that's something that now that Monica's on board, she has thrown herself into as well. So again, these are not, oh my God, what are we going to do? Scenarios, they are evolving as we work through this.
So we move on to, where is our budget right now? Those components and others have pushed us to almost a little bit over $3 million over budget. But we have actively been searching for solutions and we have a plan in place. We have already value engineered $534,000 off of this. That was by changing our patio to be at grade versus an elevation. That was significant savings. Taking some of the cart staging and circulation and cart paths, moving them to in-house work from our crew that has already been doing our cart paths and changing the material from concrete to a crushed rotten granite stone, which is actually going to be better because it'll match what we already have on the golf course. We've eliminated some curb and gutter work in the parking lot and eliminated a screen wall that was anticipated to try to hide the maintenance building. We're going to go with natural landscape instead. That's $534 and save $534,000 in savings. We are going to defer our capital that we had planned from the golf club, and we have $1.5 million in unrestricted cash from the golf club reserve fund that is going to go towards the clubhouse.
Could go towards the clubhouse. I think an important point, just not to step in, is that these are super preliminary numbers. And what we're just trying to share with you tonight is that we're not at a place where we're panicked. We're at a place where we are coming up with contingencies that are outside perhaps of what we were initially anticipating, but that importantly, it is not likely that we will issue less than $15 million in debt. So and now I'll let Stella finish what she's talking through. But we're anticipating issuing the full 15.
Right, and these are all estimated costs, so they have not gone out to bid on anything. And if you had to provide estimated costs, you're certainly going to go higher because you don't want to be like, well, this is what we budgeted, now we don't have enough money. So we do think that they are a little bit,
Conservative.
overbought.
They are conservative.
Yeah. So the golf club can help with 1.5 in unrestricted cash to assist with the overage. Friends of the Glencoe Golf Club will have $500,000 to put towards it. And we have already started and submitted one grant and anticipating signing up for additional grants and to the tune of $250,000. There are many more opportunities to defer equipment and other purchases that can also decrease the costs, such as the simulator for the golf club. Keep it in the program, but don't pay for it until we're about to open and we can use additional golf funds at that time. We're also working with the architects on their fees. We do expect those to decrease. And we're looking at an optimal size for the capacity of the clubhouse itself. So when we worked with WB Olson in the beginning and they gave us square footage and we had some numbers associated with that. Now that the architect has put into perspective, you should allow for 20 square feet per person for day-to-day operation and a 15 square fee per person for events. It looks like we have a lot of room. We're currently evaluating our competition. I've talked to several of our local competitors who are happy to share their information. Open Kitchens, who also runs Northbrook, which is the clubhouse that just opened, have been sharing with me, these are the bad things that happen here, and this is what you should do. And we're trying to figure out what the sweet spot is for events. We don't want to have a room that can hold 200 people and have it empty 90% of the time. If we don't need it, we don't need it. You know, what is our sweet spot? Do we really need to push to that 200? Or is 150 a better option for us? So I'm working with our architects and people in the area, doing some surveys. Also talking to the park district and to Hometown Coffee. What are people looking for? What numbers are you saying we can't do that? We can't accommodate you. What is your sweet spot for, you know, the showers and the birthday parties? So I do anticipate that our square footage will decrease. Not based on budget, but based on we're trying to optimize our revenue potential and what we're investing in this building, and I think come up at that intersection of optimization. So that would also decrease our overall cost of the project.
And Stella, just 2 notes up here on the financials with the Friends of Glencoe Golf Club and the grants. We just want to reiterate that that's our best guess right now. And to your point of it being a conservative estimate, those numbers could change drastically. If we
Sure.
do end up getting a large donation from the Friends, that really changes this dynamic as well.
I think as Stella said, you know, deferring other projects on the golf course in order to reallocate resources toward this is not ideal. That is perhaps a means that the Friends could use as a fundraising effort, is to say, you know, we want to make sure that we can make up this difference. But I do think as we look at these numbers overall on both sides, as Nikki said, as Stella said, they're conservative because we're so early on in the process. What we're benefiting from with WB Olson and with FGM are their experiences in the market right now and being able to articulate what they're seeing in final bid packets on projects of similar scale and scope. There are a number of good things that we're focused on in that. I think the building generally, as it's been depicted, doesn't have to dramatically shift. Those design elements that the ad hoc design review committee was working on and shared with the village board are within dollars that were anticipated. So it's not like as we work through these next few months to try to finalize design, we have to make significant changes. There may be also assumptions made that are on the conservative side relative to materials that are selected for the exterior of the building, the roofing, the finishes on the sides of the buildings, how much glazing. Those are things that are being worked out as we speak. Why we're talking about it with you tonight is simply to let you into kind of where we are and how the process is working. Numbers can be jarring, but that's why they're caveated in this certain circumstance, so that we can at least share with you kind of the process that we're employing. But otherwise, it's still very much a work in progress, and the team has really dove into it. Monica, now that she's on board, as I said, has really gotten into the engineering and kind of land and site management components of the project. And FGM is working. They're focused on getting us where we need to be within the timelines that we're still hoping to be on.
Right, thank you.
Any questions about any of this information?
I would like to see just a breakdown of 18 million
is, comprises, just because it's a big.
Yeah, as we get
Just
closer
depends
to a
on your-
better number, yeah, we can,
Because it's
yeah.
nice to see where.
Yeah. I think the big drivers are at this point, the big drivers are the building itself, so the physical construction, the delivered space. You're also, FF&E, furniture, fixtures and equipment. Those components are not an insignificant function of a building, right? But to your point, it's been a while since we built one, so it's helpful to understand kind of how that number is built. Yeah, we can do that.
The big crystal welcome sign that says by Bill Corrali, village manager, that was a significant.
With a statue right next to it, a bronze statue.
Look,
If we don't go with crystal, we'll probably
we're
say.
working on what we can, there are ways of bringing the cost down, but we don't want to cost cut everywhere. Okay.
All friends.
And frankly, I mean, really, it'll be very interesting to see if by the time you actually get around to, here, their plans are final, now let's go bid them. Whether construction costs will have come back down a bit because they had previously jumped up so much.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we've seen in our conversations with WB Olson, that's a piece of the discussion is that it's likely that certain components of construction will be very different than they were even just a year ago, once we get to that point, so. Yeah, it's hard at this stage of the game to know anything, other
It's all a
than,
moving target.
yeah.
It's more a range than a number.
It is, that's a good way of saying it.
Okay. Could you remind me what do we have in restricted funds at the golf club? About?
It will be 1.5,
No, that's unrestricted.
Oh,
What do you think
Restricted.
close to 4 million, we're at like 3.95 in our fund balance. But with the unrestricted, we have to keep 20% of our operating costs.
Mhm.
And then we also have the money that is owed to the village that we can't release until it's forgiven every year at $185,000.
Wait a minute.
So the village's, the general fund's loan to the golf
Right.
fund, which is being
Right.
forgiven on an annual.
Okay, all right, got it. Actually, I was thinking of the cash.
3,956,415 as of December 31st. That's the total. We owe the village 1.484. And then we have our annual loan forgiveness.
So there's a.
And then we have capital, golf club capital,
Right,
and then we keep 40% of our operating expense as well.
So
But
by
I-
policy, we have a minimum fund balance, so we take that out.
but the money that we're never going to get because we're forgiving it on a schedule. Is sitting there in cash,
Correct.
so
It's
I'm
available.
just saying-
Right, it is.
that's ridiculous, so that. I'm sure we can figure out some way to do that will not upset the bond rating people, because that was why we did it.
Well, and
The
that
way
was
we
why
did
we
it.
did the 10-year forgiveness,
Right.
was to release that a
Well,
little bit over time. It also goes into the calculation of other things.
I think an important
To be mindful.
point to be mindful of also is that we will not write a 15 point whatever $1 million check on a specific day.
Right, yeah, of course.
This is a project that will likely span 3 fiscal years. That will likely span a series of different funds depending upon
Mhm.
how it all plays out. So you look at a total project cost, but it really takes place over a period of time. So what that does is, just by nature of the forgiveness cycle, inserts resources back into the calculation that we can't assume today, but we will assume over the life of the project budget.
Whenever you say the word defer, I go, no, don't. So, because it doesn't, I don't know, I feel like, didn't consider. Either way, we have to do these projects that you're saying.
The capital projects.
Yeah.
And hopefully, as Phil said, these numbers may come in significantly lower.
Yeah.
But we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario, which we are, and then we can cover. And if they come in greater, then we can reinvest back into the golf club as we expected. Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to think also, we have one chance at this clubhouse.
Right.
Every other capital project, like the next big one is gonna be the driving range netting, which is also gonna bring in incremental revenue. That could be done at a later date. You know, we can't make the clubhouse better in 3 or 5 years. And,
Right.
you know, we don't wanna put an addition on and, oh, now we have the room for a better patio and we're gonna have a private event space in 10 years. You know, everything, all of the resources should be poured into clubhouse to deliver what we promised and make it the best that we can at the one shot. Here it is, one nice package. Everything that we hoped it would be to help us pay off the loan. You know, give us the best opportunity to make the incremental revenue. And the other capital projects, they can be deferred. You know, we wish they didn't have to be, and they may not have to be, but the clubhouse can't be deferred.
Any other questions? It's our staff presentation.
Oh, anybody else? Hey. Anybody else have anything else to add, say, questions? In that case, can I get a motion to adjourn? Please. Second. All those in favor? Aye. All righty, we're adjourned. Thank you again for coming.
See you on Thursday. 5:30, same place.